Mind yourself. Hi, this is Aide Adum. You can call me the voice merchant. We're going to cover public speaking, presentation, we're going to cover voiceover, and what I want you to come away from this masterclass with, one thing, courage. And just get you to that point where you are confident, because that's who you are.
I know you can take it. I know you can make it. Doesn't matter what you're going through. You're strong enough to do what you got to do. Yeah.
Any subject that you need to communicate, you need to treat your mind as a tool when you are dealing with that subject. And the importance of understanding your subject cannot be overemphasized. So you need to study it, you need to master it, you need to know it. On the slide I have there, clear thoughts beget clarity. If you ever catch anyone who is speaking and is not quite making a point, it's because in their thoughts, they are not clear. If you have muddled thoughts, your speech will be muddled. If you don't fully grasp the subject you're dealing with, it's going to come out in how you communicate it. Now, some people try to wing it, just off the cuff. They try to wing it. But I guarantee you, for the people that are listening to you, they can tell if you know what you're talking about or not. If your thoughts are clear, your speech will be clear. A good example is babies. So when you're born, your mind is like a blank slate. All right? Your memory is not fully developed. Your imagination is not developed. Your thoughts are not fully developed. So what a child sees at the moment, for as good as it can see, after all, it has eyes, doesn't it? But do you notice that a child doesn't seem to be able to see? Yeah? Sometimes you can move your hand and they can follow the motion, but you can tell that their full attention is not, it's like they know something moved. So it's because the mind is not developed. The eyes are working fine, but the mind, that's why I told you, you don't see with your eyes. You see with your mind. Now, as time goes on and the mind begins to grow, it begins to decipher light, colors, movement, depth of field, texture, and all those things that we enjoy with our eyes, so that the child gets to a certain age and they can even recognize a particular face, shapes and patterns, and you smile at them and they can smile back. Now, all this is a process of the mind being developed. And as the mind is developed, it stores memories. So this face smiles at me and smiles at me and smiles at me, and finally it goes into my memory bank. So next time I see this face, the tendency is to smile because that's what I have saved up in my memory bank, right? So the mind grows, and the more it grows, the more the child can comprehend. Now notice, because the mind is not developed, the speech is not developed either. So from when a child is little, all it can do is, it really just responds to whatever its body feels. So once it feels hungry, it'll cry. If it feels cold, it'll cry. If it's hot, it'll cry. Whatever it is, it'll just burst out crying. But with time, it begins to learn how to communicate. And eventually, it begins to realize that communication is done by words. It's not just done by emotional response. Unfortunately, some adults have still not figured that out. But children pick it up and they realize that, okay, when I want mommy's attention, it's like there's a word. Everybody says, mama. And it gets this person's attention. And then the child repeats the same thing. And eventually, the child gets to the point where their mind is clear enough, the thoughts are clear enough that they can put words together and communicate. So any subject you're dealing with, if you're clear in your mind, your speech and your communication is going to be clear. If you are not clear, spend some more time, study it until you get clarity. Now, clarity, this also deals with your vocabulary. All right? Now, I gave you an example of a child. And a child has figured out that we communicate with words. So, let's say it follows logically that the smaller your vocabulary, the less you're going to be able to communicate. The larger your vocabulary, the better you're going to be able to communicate. So you must spend time building your vocabulary. Being able to communicate. Being able to communicate. Now, the thing with vocabulary is that it's like, I like to look at it like painting a picture. If you have access to very few colors, then it's likely that your picture is going to be very dull. If you have more colors, you're going to have a brighter picture. It's the same thing with your vocabulary. If I talk about, for instance, his purple T-shirt, right? And all I can say every time I refer to his purple T-shirt is his purple T-shirt. It becomes monotonous. It becomes boring. But if I can say, maybe the first time I refer to it, I say his purple T-shirt. And the next time I refer to it, I say his purple cotton T-shirt. Next time I refer to it, I say, he's in a casual outfit. And I have a lot of vocabulary to describe, and maybe some adjectives, very fitting, laid back, relaxed. What kind of purple is it? It's a kind of faded out, bluish purple, with a little tinge of gray. Yeah? Now, the more words I use to describe it, the clearer the picture of what his T-shirt looks like becomes to you. But if all I can say is his purple T-shirt, purple T-shirt, purple T-shirt, it becomes boring and you don't have a clearer picture. So you need a good vocabulary. One of the ways I used to do this when I started out with voiceover was I used to read newspapers. That is a good place. Now, of course, we don't do newspapers the way we used to, but I guess if you read online, you need to be careful when you read stuff online, I don't know. Maybe you could read some newspapers online, all right? There are a lot of rules that journalists follow that allow them to be proper, So when you read articles on newspapers, usually the grammar is correct. Unfortunately, there are many websites on the internet where the grammar is not correct. So maybe you should read newspapers online, but it helps to build your vocabulary. Read novels. Read. Expose yourself to new words, especially when they're used in sentences and certain structures of sentences that you're not used to. Expose yourself and get a wider vocabulary. The next word there, I believe, is diction. And with diction, I think I want you to Google this. I think there's a bit of misunderstanding, especially here in our Africa parts. People usually confuse diction with the next word, which is elocution. Diction is not the way you pronounce words. Elocution has to do with how words are pronounced. Diction has more to do with eloquence. It has to do with being able to choose the correct words and put them properly. And so when you say somebody has good diction, it means that he has a command of the language. He knows how to put those words that he has in proper order in order to communicate exactly what he wants to communicate. But these are three things that you must master: great vocabulary, great diction, and elocution. Now, for us here in Africa, it is important to learn to pronounce words correctly. One thing I find out with pronunciation, if you give attention to it, is that once you become fluid with your pronunciations and you're comfortable, even if you mispronounce a word, it'll be hard to detect. Yeah, because you're fluid. You're fluid, you know. And you can always make a mental note. Usually if you mispronounce a word, well, I tend to know when I mispronounce a word. And here's how I know. I will usually hesitate when I get to the word. So if while I speak a word pops into my mind and I hesitate, usually it's because I'm not sure how to pronounce it. So my hesitation tells me that you probably mispronounced it. Now sometimes I get away with it, I get it right. But most times if I hesitate, I know that it's because I'm not very sure how to pronounce that word. And we used to make a joke in those days that English is not my mother tongue. So, but you are speaking it. So please do it properly.
In a world where you click subscribe, go on, click the button,